Thank you, Deputy President. I rise to speak on the Superannuation Legislation Amendment Bill 2019. I note that this bill makes a number of changes to provide for significant improvements to the superannuation benefits for Victoria's emergency service workers. I commend the government for working to protect the rights and retirement of our hard-working emergency workers. We can't pay them enough or provide enough benefits to compensate them for the work they do. Not everybody can do what they do. In 1992, the Keating Labor government gave us the compulsory employer superannuation contribution scheme, and it's been a huge success, and you will not find a stronger supporter of the scheme than I. Now, 27 years later, the Morrison Liberal National Government is conducting a review of Australia's compulsory scheme. It is possibly time. However, I share with others concerns to any delay to increase the planned lifting of contributions or winding back or reduction in this scheme is extremely concerning. We in this Parliament are in a privileged position in regard to our own superannuation scheme. 27 years on from the Keating Super Plan, we still have some workers falling through the cracks. Not everyone is lucky enough to have the same scheme as us. Some of our lowest paid and hardest workers have no superannuation. I want to make a comparison to the House with the Victorian taxi and hire car industry who had lost their superannuation taken from them under the taxi and hire car reforms in 2017. And I know the Red Team understands the importance of superannuation in the taxi industry, and I'd just like to remind the members on the Red Team just what they had to say about the industry and their superannuation when they were in opposition only a few short years ago. Minister Mikakos spoke in defence of taxi licences superannuation investments in June 2013 in relation to the Foundation Taxi and Hire Car Reforms Bill, and I quote from Hansard. Many licence owners bought their licence as an investment and in many cases to provide for their retirement income for self-funded retirees. They are concerned that the unrestricted access to taxi licence in the market will have a massive downward effect on the value of licences, thereby devastating not only the industry but their families as well. I'm talking here about small business owners, many of whom are immigrants and some of whom have worked their entire lives to pay off their licences, now only to have them devalued. This was there to be their super, their nest egg for their retirement, and in many cases, the only source of income. Minister Mikakos said many licence owners bought their licence as an investment, and in many cases they provide retirement income for their self-funded retirees. There could be, Mr Mellon had acknowledged that taxi licence was superannuation during the debates around the ride-sharing bill in June 2016. I quote from Hansard. There could be some sort of levy for a fund to be put in place to compensate these people. However, for many of these people, that is their pension, that is their retirement nest egg, and we definitely do not want to see them going to the wall. Well, I can tell you they've gone to the wall. Minister Somyak was quite clear during the debate on the foundation reforms in 2013, and I quote from Hansard on the 25th of June 2013. The threshold question for the members of the government to consider before they vote on this bill, and they should have a think about this, is whether they would like their superannuation to be ripped out of their hands. Would you want the government to step in and take away their houses or their superannuation? Those are in the threshold questions. Members opposite should decide which way they vote today by considering some of these questions. Minister Somyak spoke again in 2016 and said devaluation of taxi industry was the equivalent of taking our superannuation off us. I quote from Hansard on June 22, 2016, during the debate on the ride-sharing bill. This bill does not provide a level playing field across all industry participants. If the bill becomes law, thousands of Victorians could face bankruptcy. It would almost wipe out the value of existing taxi licences. It does not provide for any compensation or assistance and would financially ruin many families. A few years ago, the taxi industry was deregulated. For a lot of Victorian small businesses, I guess they are micro businesses. In particular, I talk about the family or single licence holders. The value of their asset was decimated overnight, and it would be comparable for those of us fortunate enough to have it taking our superannuation off us. We have some financial hardship provisions put in place, but without proper regulation of the ride-sharing industry, there will not be a level playing field, and the lack of level playing field would be further financial hardship placed on taxi owners. It would be comparable to taking our superannuation off us. Minister Wynne, in the other place, was a strong defender of the taxi industry during the foundation reforms. We unambiguously support fairness, and that is what this government ought to be about. We say that the bill that is currently before this House is fundamentally flawed. It is not fair. It is not fair to licence holders, and it's not fair to consumers. Indeed, it's a flawed bill. Minister Donnellan was very critical of the Coalition Government's foundation reforms. I quote from Hansard, June 26, 2013, when the minister spoke on the foundation reforms. Comrades, the Cold War is not over tonight because communism is alive and well on the other side of the House. Rent is being set in this legislation and assets of other people are being appropriated with no compensation. The wood ducks on the opposite side pretend they represent small business, yet they sit in a place and vote to destroy the value of taxi licences of hard-working individuals. What we have is a group of people who pretend on an ongoing basis that they are business-friendly, but at the end of the day they sit like wood ducks and help the Minister of Public Transport destroy the value of taxi licences. People have worked hard to build up their assets, but today the team opposite is about to destroy the value of those assets. You will wear this legislation like a crown of thorns on your heads because at the end of the day, people will remember what you have done. I say to members on both sides, the red and blue teams, that you share that crown of thorns. We do remember what you have done, and that is why I stand before you today. I ask those current members, Labor members, when did the Victorian transport workers and their families become less worthy for their superannuation? At what point did fairness that Minister Wynne spoke of no longer apply to the taxi industry? Perpetual taxi licences were seen as superannuation, in fact, encouraged by Labor governments. They were held as collateral by banks, rolled into superannuation funds and served as a source of ongoing retirement income for those retired from the industry but able to lease out their licence for a fair ongoing income. Owning a taxi licence was superannuation. 2 years ago, 2017, the Andrews Labor government stripped the taxi industry of licences, its superannuation, paying out an arbitrary compensation and replacing them with a $50 permit. Banks that collateral now worth nothing called in loans. Retirees suddenly robbed of an income from their leased licences were forced to sell their homes and apply for a pension. Self-managed super funds with taxi licence as their nest egg become worthless overnight. Those that are still working in the industry saw their secure retirement plans dissolve. I say this Victorian transport workers are worthy of having their superannuation and their retirement protected. They need and deserve their superannuation back. My colleague Mr Erdogan, his father was a taxi driver and is now a hire car operator. Their family is deserving. I know, Mr President, that those in the red team who are sympathetic and admit these reforms didn't land as it should or could have. They tell me it's too late and we must move on. We cannot move on. We cannot move on. They're broken people. It's never too late to do what's right. Deputy President, I apologise, I have digressed again. Today, of course, I will support the magnificent work of the emergency service workers and, of course, I will support this bill. I commend this bill to the House.
Thank you, Mr Barton. Ms